Hello and welcome to yet another adventure in Australian literature. So, I have something special for you today. But before we start, something else that I need to talk to you about is this book, the Cockie Press novel writing course book, to help you write your great Australian novel. Help you write your great Australian novel. Links are down below. Will really help you get that first draft. You can have a first draft done by Christmas if you get one now. This week, I decided that I would bring you something a little different, maybe something you didn't necessarily expect. We've done some very serious books so far, looking at Australian literature, really serious writers, important writers. And where I am at the moment, we're in our third month of lockdown, and I think we need a bit of a laugh. So I am bringing you They're a Weird Mob by Nino Culotta. Now, I know Hatta has talked to you or mentioned this in her first video about hoaxes, but today we're going to actually talk about the book properly, not just mention that this is one of the great literary hoaxes. It is one of the great literary hoaxes of Australia. Its author, Nino Culotta, does not exist. Its author is John O'Grady, a pharmacist from Sydney. He wrote it in the 1950s, and it was published by his son. Got it published while he was actually out of the country. He was in Samoa, being the chief pharmacist in Samoa, and it sold 130,000 copies in its first year. Okay, this is the 1950s. This is 1957, 1958. Australia has like a tiny little publishing industry. Almost nothing is published in this country by the Australian publishers. Patrick White is first published by his English publishers at this point in time. Okay, Australian publishing is more or less importing stuff and doing Australian editions. It is almost non-existent. And this silly little book, and it's a silly little book. It's a very funny, silly little book. Sells 130,000 copies in Australia. That is unheard of. A successful book in this country in 2021, okay, a successful novel is about 12,000 copies. This sold over 10 times that. So what makes this so astonishing? What makes it? Well, it's funny. It's very, very funny. It tells the story of Nino Culotta, who is an Italian journalist who has been sent by the magazine that he works for to Australia, because so many Italian people are emigrating to Australia in the 50s. And so he's been sent to Australia to find out what this country that so many Italian people are going to is like. So he comes to Australia. He speaks English well. He is a well-educated man. He's a journalist. He's a writer. He thinks, okay, this will be easy. This will be not a problem. He rocks up in Sydney, only to discover Australia's very different to what he was expecting. For one thing, though they speak English, he's not entirely certain what they are saying. So he gets to Australia, he gets a cab, or the cab driver asks him. Remember, he speaks English. He's not ready for Australian English. After a while, he said, "Well, we can't sit here all day. Where are we going?" And he's silently translating this into English and then into Italian. So he's having to do two lots of translation. And then he suddenly said, the cab driver suddenly says, because he's waiting for this passenger to say, you know, "Where are we going?" He says, "God, I've been driving this bloody thing since 1:00 in the morning, and now it's bloody near time for lunch, and I have to get landed with a bloody ning-nong who doesn't know where he's bloody going. Will the cross do ya?" So this is the world that Nino enters, this big, striny world. Nino then gets himself a job with some builders in Punchbowl. Punchbowl in the 50s is the very edges of Sydney. It's now what's known as southwestern Sydney, quite in the city, but it's the outer edges of suburbia on the southwest of the city that are being built, new houses for this expanding population, the post-war migration boom. This is actually where a lot of the post-war migrants will end up, is Punchbowl, these houses that are being built. So he gets a job as a brickies labourer, and he works there and meets people and makes friends, though he's still spending a lot of time trying to work out, who are these people? Who are these impossible, very loud, very weird people? And this is one of the funny things about this book. People who don't know this book generally think the weird mob refers to the Italian migrants. But those people aren't exactly understanding how Australian comedy works. The weird mob is us. We're the weird mob. We're the ones who are being looked at in this book. The whole thing is a celebration of Australia. Even though this was written at the height of the cringe, this isn't a cringe book, which is quite interesting. Because it's a comedy, we don't really cringe at comedy. We might sort of have a degree of cringe for a lot of other things, but comedy is one thing that we like, making ourselves laugh. There is no situation, if there is a situation that is so dire we can't have a laugh, then we're in big, big trouble. Now, if you're Australian, you probably are going to work out exactly what I'm going to say, but this is how much we will make a joke of things. Constitutional crisis. 1975. The Labor government has been dismissed by the Governor-General. And who is down there on Parliament steps? Gary MacDonald as Norman Gunston, jazzing up the crowd and being Norman Gunston, this pretend journalist, bugging politicians and being there in the footage. You can't find footage of the dismissal that doesn't have Norman Gunston in it. That, as Andrew Denton said, that's so Australian. That's Australian. Australian comedy is not like a lot of comedy from a lot of other places. It's very self-deprecating. It is very dry. It is very satirical. So laughing with knives is something we really, really do. It can go badly, badly wrong, as I believe the Chaser discovered when they had the Make a Reasonable Wish skit that got a lot of controversy. People, there are some things that it's like, oh, went too far. But on the whole, there aren't a lot of subjects that you can't touch. A lot of our comedy is not in books. It's visual, it's television, it's movies. So funny books are actually very rare, which makes this one a good place to start. In the 1950s, we've got another couple coming. But this is one of the early funny ones. And it's very Australian humour. We are laughing at ourselves. It's not punching down. So even things that could look a bit like they're punching down, Kath and Kim, could look like we're looking down, but actually it's quite affectionate. The Castle is a brilliant example of an affectionate look at these people who live right at the edge of the airport, and they're going to keep their place. It's the vibe, as they say. But that's probably it's the vibe is probably the best way to describe Australian comedy. You know when it works because it's the vibe. So Australian comedy, I don't know that anyone from America or England would be able to pitch, sell, and create a beloved sitcom out of the dynamics of an elderly lady with dementia and her son who looks after her. Only in Australia with that one, with that particular scenario, with the great Gary MacDonald and Ruth Cracknell, managed to be a beloved 6-season sitcom. So Australian comedy can be an acquired taste. I don't know how well they translate overseas. I think the English might understand our comedy better, but I really don't think they translate into America. Americans think that Crocodile Dundee is Australian comedy. Sorry, guys. No. So keep these things in mind, just how dark we will go, because the next book we're going to have a look at is Death in Brunswick. And Death in Brunswick gets pretty dark. I'm going to put a link down below to Gary MacDonald at the dismissal, to Norman Gunston at the dismissal, just because it's worth watching. Just, you have to see it to believe it, because it's so unreal. But they're a weird mob. We are a weird mob here. And I think we all need a bit of comedy and we all need a bit of fun. So go on, have a read. Can't hurt. Need something. Anyway, I'll see you later with some more adventures in Australian literature. Bye.
If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other materials to help with your writing.